Well, welcome along to day 2 of Landlord Debt Advisory Week, powered by our partner of the same name, the only FCA regulated company in the UK who is authorised to deal with this very specialist area of landlord debt. And once again, I'm joined by Tom Cardwell, who is co-founder of Fairfield Capital, the group of companies. And Tom, today we are going to talk about a company, a lender that actually kind of puts dread into landlords, and that is Mortgage Express. Now, obviously, taken over by UKAR under a remit from the government to, clear down the loan book. And at Property Tribes, we've heard some really bad stories of how landlords have been treated by Mortgage Express when they go into arrears, how aggressive they are. Now, you're not frightened of Mortgage Express, are you?
No, I mean, our relationship with lenders generally is one where we're bringing the lender a solution to a problem that affects both the borrower, the landlord, and the lender themselves. I mean, typically our involvement with Mortgage Express or any buy-to-let lender is where there's going to be a mortgage shortfall and there's an asset or property to be disposed of. In that instance, we find Mortgage Express to be reasonable to deal with, and I think probably, hopefully, a large part of that will be to do with our track record and experience. We're bringing a lender, we're packaging up a solution that works for both lender and borrower, rather than taking some sort of aggressive or difficult approach.
Well, one of the things that Property Tribes members have reported is that that Mortgage Express have constantly been in touch with them and being quite aggressive towards them. But of course, if they came to you, then those kind of calls and letters would stop because you would take over from there, wouldn't you?
Yes, that's right. From, I suppose, we're always looking at from both the landlord and the lender's perspective. Certainly from the lender's perspective, if they can see a workable plan and they can see that in stages it's being delivered within the time frames that have been pre-agreed, well then obviously that takes a huge amount of pressure off both parties. And we've mediated in a lot of cases like that. Thinking of one case in particular, we have a chap who has 17, and there were Mortgage Express mortgages originally, subsequently sold. And we're taking on his case where we'll be negotiating the sale of the 17 properties, which will crystallise a shortfall, and there will be an affordable settlement put together in respect of the rest of the debt. And I mean, that's, I suppose, in a nutshell what we do. Lenders expect it when they're speaking to us. They know that we're not coming to them with, good news. We're not coming to them whether they're going to get written huge cheques and things like that. It's always going to be some sort of carefully worked and planned accommodation that we've spoke to the client about. The client believes it wants to take that action and it's realistically deliverable, and then it's about working things out to get, I suppose, both parties, as I keep saying, both lender and landlord, to the end of the road, to some sort of final outcome that both parties can live with.
Now, I think we want to be realistic here, of course, and if somebody is struggling with arrears and Mortgage Express are in the mix somewhere, then it's very likely that they are going to want those properties to be sold.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's typically the buy-to-let clients that are approaching us have maybe not all of their properties, but certainly some of them that are going to be effectively underwater in a negative equity position. Our first part of our process is where we complete a case review to establish, well, really what are the options and what should be done. As I suppose your Mortgage Express landlords or Mortgage Express mortgage landlords have experienced, there isn't a lot of wriggle room. I appreciate, and certainly when it comes to arrears, they can be relatively quick with receivership appointments, and they can be, I suppose, potentially difficult to deal with. What we would say is, if you think there's a problem coming over the hill, if you think there's something, even if it's a few months down the road, or if there's an end of term coming, come and speak to us. We'll give you the good news or the bad news, but it will be correct, and we can say that with certainty because we've dealt with so many landlords, and obviously we're dealing with all of the lenders.
Yeah, people certainly on social media are very sceptical about any debt write-off by Mortgage Express, but you have achieved that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we're dealing with buy-to-let portfolios, obviously most of our clients are going to be multi-banked. We do individual lender debt negotiations and write-offs, which might be a single property or a number of properties with one lender. We also do voluntary arrangements. In many cases, again, it can be a portfolio where some of the portfolio is in relatively good shape and long-term will work out, and some parts of it are toxic. And we can take the toxic or the underperforming buy-to-lets. We can persuade any lender, or most lenders, to allow for the properties to be sold and then package together all the debt into one single settlement.
I think from what I'm taking away from what you're saying there is that there's actually quite a wide range of remedies that you have at your fingertips, provided that the landlord does get in touch with you as soon as the problem arises. The longer they leave it, then the kind of remedies that you might be able to apply to them, that they'll start to diminish, won't they?
Yes, very much so. Well, just as you've said, the scope of options, the more time you have to plan these things, the easier it is to bring a proposal to a lender, and not even just in terms of what the actual options are, but also the stress that the landlord goes through. Early action can certainly mitigate that.
Absolutely. Now, we've been talking about Mortgage Express, but then we've got this kind of added thing that's happened fairly recently where they've sold the debt on to a range of completely unknown companies. I myself have got had three mortgages with Mortgage Express, and two of them have gone to Rosinca, and one of them has been retained by Mortgage Express. I think some of our members start to get quite worried about why certain lenders have got certain mortgages and then Mortgage Express have held on to others. I don't know what the rhyme and reason behind that is, but you've started to deal with these new unknown companies as well, haven't you? How are you finding them?
Yeah, that's right. And obviously, in many cases, they've purchased the debt, obviously for a lot less than the full outstanding balance. And in my experience, right across the board, where you have an entity that has effectively purchased mortgage debt, well, they're acting in a collections and a recoveries capacity. They're obviously not a lender per se, and they're running down the existing mortgage account. And our experience of those sort of organisations has actually been very, very good. Providing it's a compelling proposal, providing that it's fair and reasonable, and it's delivered within timescales that are agreed. All of these organisations that we've dealt with have been very open to sale and settlements of properties.
Well, that's good to know, because the other thing, of course, is the right to consolidate, which Mortgage Express used quite ruthlessly in some cases. Are you seeing that being used?
In terms of dealing with the asset management companies that have purchased this debt, in our experience, no. So I can't say that doesn't happen out in the ether, but certainly in terms of cases that we've dealt with, in many cases we're putting together voluntary arrangements where there's, again, the landlord might be multi-banked, so we might be doing a single settlement across a number of different lenders, but it's certainly not something that any ongoing case landlords that we have that have experienced that.
Well, that's good to know. We've actually got a list here of these companies, and they're not known to us at all. There's Jasper Mortgages, Melanite Mortgages, Morag Finance, Rosinca, Sybarite Mortgages, Zephyr Home Loans, Bloom Home Loans, Topaz Finance is another one. These are all companies that have purchased the debt from Mortgage Express, and now the landlord is actually now obligated to those companies. In a way, when it happened to me, I felt quite positive about it. I thought I'd rather be with them than with MX.
Yeah, well, I suppose the counter of that, it could be better the devil, but Topaz is the actual company, and each of these are trading styles based on the tranche of debt that they've purchased. So ultimately, it's a Topaz decision. And again, I'm sure some of your subscribers have had horror stories dealing with any of these entities. But in our experience, again, if you come early and you can deliver something that's reasonable to both sides, they're definitely open for business.
So those people that are left with MX on MX books, do you sort of feel that they should be worried that their debt hasn't been sold? Is it their debt's worse, or what do you feel the outlook is for MX mortgages in general?
I'll be honest, I don't really know. What my best guess would be that over time, all of that Mortgage Express book will be sold, and it's just happening in tranches over time, just probably from a logistical and a monetary standpoint. So I don't think that those left with Mortgage Express mortgages are necessarily going to be in a potentially a worse position later.
Okay. Well, I think it's important just to say, Tom, and I know you'll agree with this, that if you do have a Mortgage Express mortgage, 3 things: make your mortgage payment on time, as you would, of course, with any lender, but, you know, be extra certain on that one. Number 2, stick to the terms and condition of the mortgage. If they are broken in any way, it does give MX an excuse to dive in. And number 3, maintain your properties, because I have heard of MX doing drive-bys, having a look at properties, and perhaps finding an excuse to kind of go and talk to the landlord about their mortgage. So all good points.
Yes, absolutely. One case again that sort of just springs to mind, it's actually where the mortgage term had expired last year. There's an issue with the cladding on the property. There's an ongoing legal case. So the value of the property is naturally fallen. The property is unmortgageable. And the client or the landlord's in an unusual position where on one hand the lender would like to take the property via receivership, but effectively it's unmortgageable anyway, and there's going to be a huge shortfall. So in that instance, the landlord themselves, aside from dealing with us, has persuaded Mortgage Express to effectively wait for the outcome of that legal case before taking things further. So there is maybe not as much wriggle room as we would all like, but there is a little bit of wriggle room there. And what I would always say is speak to ourselves or speak to the lender, but speak to someone and speak to them early.
Yeah, well, that's very good advice, and that's going to be our advice throughout this week here on Landlord Debt Advisory Week. And tomorrow we are going to be meeting Robert Wilson, who is a client of the Fairfield Capital Group, and he's going to be talking about his debt story and how he recovered from that. And I think, Tom, one thing that he said off camera when we finished the interview, which was, I'm sure, very, very gratifying to you, was that it meant that when his problem was solved, he could put it behind him, and he said he got his life back. Yeah. The phone calls stopped, the letters with red writing on them stopped. That must be so satisfying for you at the end of the day when you get a resolution that achieves that for a client.
Very much so. You know, obviously we're a business and we're here to make money and pay wages and all of those things. But when you get that phone call, or you get a nice review from a client, or sometimes cards, or sometimes you get a nice bottle of whiskey, it's very much appreciated. And I think one of the things that clients have certainly told me this over the years, and I suppose I've come to accept it, that often the situation that they're in with the problem, the fear of the resolution is a heck of a lot worse than the actual resolution. You know, for example, I'm thinking of one client in particular. Him and his wife took me out to dinner. They had 4 buy-to-let properties which were heavily underwater. They were all sold. There was a reasonable settlement put together. And actually, I'd been speaking to this guy on and off for 3 or 4 years before he actually took the plunge. And what he said to me over dinner was, sort of in a joking way, was, why did you not tell me to do that earlier? Well, I tried. You know, but sometimes it's that fear of the unknown. And we would like to, again, we're talking about dispelling myths. We want to dispel all of those myths and show people in a very sort of open and transparent way what the options are. Yeah. We can't help everybody, but we'll certainly talk. We're happy to speak to anyone and certainly give them some sort of guidance anywhere we can. And I know that to be true, Tom, because I've referred people direct to you, and you've always been so supportive and helpful to them, and they've always reported back to me that a conversation with you had helped a great deal. And I think it's very important that landlords know that there are options out there for them. There's companies like Landlord Debt Advisory that can support you if you are in financial difficulty. So we'll continue on with our Landlord Debt Advisory Week, and we're going to be doing some myth busting, and we've got lots more interesting stuff surrounding this topic for you coming up as Landlord Debt Advisory Week continues.